border, vet these people. Like, how come they get to cut the line in front of millions of people waiting? They're waiting to come to America the right way, but they get like pushed in front. The migrants, the illegal migrants, they get everything. They put them first, put Americans last. We need to be America first, not Americans last.
Do you think that AOC was responsive to messages like this?
No, she cut her little press conference early because of us. She kept on talking the same thing: housing for migrants, work for migrants. But what about our homeless veterans? What about our homeless Americans? She puts the migrants first, us last.
You know what happened last night? Set a new record on the border. 10,000 people. That's all that we know of. There's probably more. Came across that border illegally. We have a crisis that the president continues to ignore. It's just not people coming from South America. They're coming from 160 other countries. CNN reported last week that there was an individual bringing people across that had ties to ISIS. I have asked the White House for a classified briefing for all of Congress. They have not provided that yet.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. We got to talk about the illegal immigration crisis because there is an invasion at the border. Now, last time we talked about this, we talked about the Biden administration essentially folding to the Democrat mayors, begging and pleading for the administration to expedite work permits for the illegals, okay? And this essentially is going to incentivize more illegals to cross the border, and that's exactly what is happening. There's a full-blown invasion of the United States happening at the border. I know Democrats, liberals, progressives get offended by using that term, but I'm not sure exactly what else you would call a situation where you have illegals coming into your country and planting their flag at your border, okay? Like, for example, the Venezuelan flag, which was planted at the border in Texas by illegals, okay? I mean, that is what an invasion looked like, okay? If you're planting your country's flag in another country, right, that you're invading, that you're coming into illegally, that is an invasion. I'm just saying, okay? As we have a record number of illegals that are now crossing the border. I mean, they're coming through the border like a Durex condom. Take a look.
We're getting breaking news from the border. Customs and Border Patrol sources telling Fox News they've recorded 11,000 encounters in the past 24 hours. They say it's the single highest day in recent memory in that town of Eagle Pass in Texas. Alone, Eagle Pass saw more than 4,000 this weekend. A lot of these are live images now that we've been watching throughout the morning. And screen left is from Sunday, but we saw something very similar just 2 hours ago. So it's not ebbing, in case you're wondering on that point.
Publicly, this is simply not sustainable. Here, where we are standing, we had more than 1,300 migrants walk by today. It's in the hundreds, more than 500 today, and you've got a capacity problem here, Mike. More than 200% over capacity, meaning they've got nowhere to put these folks. That's why we see bus after bus.
In Eagle Pass, Texas, where just moments ago, Customs and Border Protection cut a hole through the concertina wire that has been stretched by Texas DPS along the border there to allow migrants to come through. It was initially a group of about 60 to 70 people. It swelled to some 300 very, very quickly. Some women and children who were sort of in the middle of the river were picked up by, I guess it would be Texas DPS, because they're running the airboats there up and down the river, and taken out of the water and into safer ground there. But as you can see, as we have watched for the last couple of weeks, the illegal migration across the river into the United States continues with this border crossing in Eagle Pass, seeing thousands of people. And then over the weekend, we set what we believe is a new record of 11,000 people crossing into the United States in a single day. We'll keep an eye on this for you.
Yeah, so you've seen that, you heard that. Again, full-blown invasion. Now, of course, the politicians are not really going to do anything about this. Democrats and Republicans, to be quite honest with you, they're just going to play the blame game, okay? And that's what we got to talk about here today, as AOC went on Face the Nation and essentially blamed the border crisis on Republicans, okay? More specifically, she blamed Trump and she blamed Marco Rubio, who is the author of the sanctions that were levied against Venezuela due to Nicolas Maduro's regime oppressing his own people, his socialist communist regime that AOC fails to mention as one of the reasons why the country is so unstable because of socialism. Take a look.
In the New York Times in August is saying immigration is arguably this administration's weakest issue. What did you mean?
Well, I think the politics around immigration in the United States is, to no surprise to many people, one of the most contentious issues. We saw this dramatically inflamed under President Trump, but it remains to be a very controversial and contentious issue. And that makes, I believe, enacting some of the policy changes necessary much more complicated and difficult. But additionally, I think we also need to examine the root of this problem, because if we are constantly engaging in foreign policy that drives people to our southern border. In this specific instance, U.S. sanctions that were originally authored by Marco Rubio began and precipitated, certainly took a large part in the driving of populations to our southern border. Shortly after those sanctions, those broad-based sanctions.
You're talking about Venezuela.
Yes. Shortly after those broad-based sanctions were enacted, we started seeing dramatic increases in these populations that were coming to our southern border. And so we have to address the root of these population movements and the migration crisis. And we also have to address the domestic U.S. policy issues when it comes to immigration reform.
But the Maduro government has also been responsible for large parts of that. Are you saying that you want the Biden administration to pull back pressure on him?
I think we need to re-examine the nature of these sanctions. There are sanctions that are very specific. For example, the Magnitsky Act sanctions that do actually focus on the decision makers and people who may be violating norms, practices, civil rights, but broad-based sanctions that punish the overall economy and harm everyday working people that are driving them into the economic and political destitution.
So when Secretary Mayorkas says Congress needs to fix the immigration system, you're saying the federal government also has to make changes in its foreign policy to do what you are arguing. Do you think President Biden needs to go to the border? Do you intend to go to the border?
Yes, we absolutely do. We've also been dealing with the busing situation in New York City, so we have really been looking at that as part of our front line as well. And we want to also be an example to the country as well of a humane process and the supports and changes that are necessary for us to maintain that standard of care. And it's a standard of care that, frankly, is something that we should be proud of. Folks are coming into the Roosevelt Hotel. There are absolutely capacity issues that we had been struggling with.
Migrants have to leave after 30 days now.
And we have these changes from the Adams administration. But when you step foot into the Roosevelt Hotel, people are getting vaccinated, kids are getting enrolled in school, we are seeing people that are actually getting mental health care assessments, and now, hopefully, with this recent designation for work authorization and the ability to work through TPS, hopefully folks are going to be getting jobs from the New York businesses that are asking to hire them.
Yeah, so you've seen that, you heard that. Okay, that is AOC not blaming socialism, not really trying to blame Maduro for what is happening in Venezuela. No, it's the Republicans' fault. It's the U.S. fault, right? It's America's fault. It's Trump's fault, right? It's our sanctions that we levied against the country because of the human rights violations. Allegedly, there's been extrajudicial killings of people, thousands there in that country. Again, that country is experiencing hyperinflation because of their socialist economic policies. Again, none of which AOC happens to mention, okay? But she can name drop Rubio, she can name drop Trump, but won't actually name drop the dictator, the socialist dictator that is responsible for the migrants leaving Venezuela. And she also won't place blame on Joe Biden, the Biden administration, who basically, in my opinion, is doing a terrible job of handling the crisis. But people like Biden and her, okay, incentivize illegals to come through the border. They said, hey, come one, come all, everybody come through the border. You guys encourage the illegals to come, okay? This is what they did. This is what people like her asked for. This is what she advocated for, okay? This is what she advocated for, right? It's just amazing how that works, okay? AOC seems to have more contempt, and she wants to put more blame on Republicans than she wants to put on again, the leader of that country. It's amazing how that works, right? But you also notice how AOC seems to be very proud of all the resources, all the taxpayer dollars going towards these illegals in New York City. They're getting mental health care checkups. Kids are going to school. They're getting food. Okay, they're about to get jobs. Okay, they are giving illegals everything they could possibly ever want with your taxpayer dollars. And AOC is proud of it. Okay, I mean, essentially, these illegals can do anything that they want, right? And they're going to get the red carpet rolled out for them. And Democrats are going to justify it, including having illegals turn this country into a third world country by essentially selling box on the side of the street in New York City. You're going to have Democrats like New York Democrat Jessica Ramos coming out here and defending it, saying, look, we don't necessarily need to penalize this, okay? It's totally fine for illegals to sell box on the street, again, like it's a third world country. Take a look.
And in your neighborhood, you've seen a big influx of human trafficking. Yeah. Women on the street, children on the street. What's going on? What can you do about that?
Right. So for folks at home, I represent the neighborhoods of Jackson Heights, Corona, East Elmhurst, that area where I was born and raised. I'm Colombian, the daughter of Colombian immigrants, like many of the migrants, actually. So we naturally attracted a lot of these new families, and what we're seeing, especially along Roosevelt Avenue, is a lot of survival work, right? So we see street vending, we see people waiting to be picked up by construction contractors as day laborers, we see sex workers, we see all sorts of things that people have to do in order to survive. That's why we call it survival work. And while there is human trafficking, the law, unfortunately, does not help distinguish between those who are trafficked and who are not, for us to actually be able to find those bad guys and catch them. So we want to be very careful. We, of course, are not looking necessarily to criminalize people, but we do want them to work within the regulations and within the law as much as possible.
Amazing stuff, right? I'm never surprised at the new words that you learn, or phrases or terms that you learn from the woke language, right? Wokenese, okay? The new wokenese term that we have here is called survival work, right? It's similar to the term unhoused, right? They call unhoused person, right? That's the new word for homeless. Survival work is the new term for illegals that sell box on the street, right? And that, stand on the street waiting to be picked up to work, right? To do, I guess, I don't know, construction work or something like that. To work illegally under the table, okay? That's called survival work, right? According to Democrats. And it shouldn't be penalized, even though it is blatantly illegal, right? Like crossing the border illegally. Shouldn't be penalized, okay? These people actually think that they should be rewarded for it, right? Rewarding them with more taxpayer-funded resources that, again, they're gifted to by the Democrats because they really do believe that America should come last, okay? They don't believe in America first, right? They believe that other countries like Ukraine should come first. Illegal immigrants, like, the immigrants coming through the border, they should come first. They all come first. Americans come last, okay? This is what Democrats believe. It's just amazing how we've mobilized our resources to take care of illegals in ways that you can only dream of and imagine for taking care of actual American citizens. Again, this should be a wake-up call to the urban population in this country about who Democrats actually care about and who they don't care about, okay? I mean, they're essentially now trying to allow illegals to work, right? To work and to take your jobs, okay? And it's funny because Democrats claim to be the party against big business, but that's exactly what big business wants, right? Like, this is a pro-business policy, okay? Illegal immigration, because it's cheap labor, right? All these illegals that are coming through the border, they're eventually going to be allowed to work, and the illegals are going to take your jobs, right? Not only are they going to take your jobs, just wait until they have kids, okay? Well, some of them already have kids, but a lot of them, they're going to have kids. They're going to have multiple kids, right? They're going to have 4 and 5 kids, okay, because that tends to be what happens when you are on the lower end of the economic ladder. You're going to have more kids. They're going to have more kids, okay, and they're all going to be Democrat Party voters, right? They're going to be replacing people in this country, okay, and I'm talking about black folks, to be quite honest with you, because, again, a lot of these illegals, they're going to these liberal cities, right, and they're being placed in black neighborhoods. And, again, black people voted for it, right? And, you know, black people have been boo-hoo-whining and crying about a lack of political power, okay, and attention given towards them by Democrats. If you think that is bad now, just wait until, again, the illegals, right, and their kids and the population becomes so much that, hey, black people are going to become irrelevant, okay? The black population isn't really growing as a percentage compared to everybody else. It's the Hispanic, Latino population that is really growing. Even the Asian population is growing. Black people are going to be hurt a lot, okay? And, you know, white people as well, too, in this country. And it's just going to be a total disaster, right? And Democrats are totally fine with it because, again, big business, they can get cheap labor, and these are future Democrat Party voters, right? The illegals will be forever thankful for the Biden administration for letting them into the country and giving them the opportunity to use our resources and to start a new life. And again, this is what a lot of these people voted for, right? They didn't want to close the border, right? They wanted just to let illegals into the country because, hey, it's racist to close the border. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Well, this is diversity, equity, and inclusion going wrong, okay? And hopefully, I am hoping and praying that we see a massive turnaround, a massive backlash against Democrats and the Biden administration for letting this happen to our country. We'll see. I got my doubts, right, in regards to these people changing their votes, but maybe, just maybe, we will see a massive landslide and a shift in how people think about these issues. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a black conservative perspective. Peace.